I guess clean energy, that's the one that I'm most focused on right now. That one's kind of had a nice second half, or at least the fall season. It's the interest has come back, so a lot of the
This is something
uh,
that's I don't think Nick and I know very much about at all. So I think out of us three, you're the one who,
Yeah.
is more in the know about, cobalt, lithium, and all of that. Like, what can you tell us, noob heads, about that?
cobalt is a byproduct of primary copper or nickel mines. So this is something, once you figure that out, and you start doing your research and you realize, I think there's only one company out there, I think it's in Morocco, that's a primary cobalt
Hmm.
producer. Um, so then you kind of start, backpedaling a little bit in the sense where you realize, okay, this is not that straightforward of a
You see how you
process.
said Morocco because that's in Africa? Nick is already like making funny noises. Sorry, I can resist.
Yeah.
um, so there's two companies that immediately come to mind to fit that first criteria. The first company has been in development for a long period of time. So if not 10 years, it's getting up there. It's called eCobalt Solutions. Full disclosure, I do have shares of this company,
Mhm.
and it's a development project in Idaho, which that has a lot of appeal, I think, to investors, especially ones that want to kind of stay in the safer jurisdictions, if you will. So it's a primary cobalt deposit. It's located in Idaho. Um, it's very advanced stage, so that has some appeal as well in the sense it's fully permitted. It's relatively high grade. The only real knock that I could think of with this company um, is it's a small deposit, so you don't really get the size and scale. And for a lot of investors, you kind of want to have the best of all worlds. You want to maximize leverage to a rising commodity price. So that's something to keep in mind. Is it's relatively small in scale. There is exploration potential, but I think I forget what their throughput rate is, but it pales in comparison if you're going to compare it to the largest cobalt deposits out in Congo that Glencore owns, and Katanga Mining. That's another, I guess, more of a junior play, even though it's like 80% owned by Glencore,
Hmm.
and that stock was kind of a 10 bagger this year. So you can kind of see the market does have a strong appetite for size, just to be able to ride the leverage. So eCobalt doesn't have that, but it checks a lot of the other boxes since it's safe location, it's high grade, it's primary cobalt. The only other play that comes to mind for me is a company called Cobalt 27, and that's not a miner. It's more. I think they want to advance down the path of becoming more of a royalty and streaming type of business, but in the meantime, they've kind of taken a hoarding strategy where they have three warehouses strategically located around the globe, and they are just stockpiling cobalt. And this is like, I forget the exact number, so don't quote me on this, but I think they have like 2,000 tons of high grade and low grade cobalt material, just kind of sitting in inventory. The nice thing about cobalt that I kind of learned is it doesn't degrade. It's not like
Mm.
you can't really stockpile lithium carbonate
Mm.
because if you kind of keep it in warehouse for too long, the material will degrade and you can't produce, high quality, cathode material or lithium ion batteries out of that. But with cobalt, apparently you don't have that same kind of problem and constraint. So you can really just kind of hoard it and keep it aside and, wait for the price to kind of spike. I mean, that's the speculation right now. With a lot of people in the industry, and this kind of gives investors I guess safer way to play cobalt because you get to kind of track the commodity price, but you don't take the risks associated with mining and development, which we're all, I guess, familiar with. Many things can go wrong going that route. So a lot of I guess retail newbies that are getting started, that's kind of an easy stock to point in their direction, to start doing your research in. So those are the two that immediately come to mind for me. But outside of that, just to answer your question, Fabi, it's for the most part, investors are going to have to dive into more of the copper nickel place if they want the exposure to cobalt.
Okay. Well, thanks, because that to me was, like something that I've been sort of putting off actually researching. I'm like, cobalt, nickel, people are talking about batteries and there's copper and everything. And copper is way easier to understand, right? Because it's almost like oil, everything uses oil, everything uses copper. You can, look at the deposits, you have different companies at different stages of development. Some of them have a bit of gold thrown into. Some of the companies that we like for gold have copper thrown into them. So it's sort of
Hmm.
like you're almost in copper sometimes, even if you don't want to, right? But cobalt, it seems to me like if there's ever a junior that makes a significant discovery outside of the Congo, Russia, or other dangerous place area, it seems like that would be just explosive if that were to happen.
Yeah, just a quick comment on that. You're absolutely right, Fabi, and that's why there's certain companies. Just through my research, I found like European Cobalt is one.
Hmm.
Um, I I think that's in Slovakia. Um, I forget exactly, but it's high grade cobalt. They don't have a resource yet, but the stock's gone up, I think, fivefold this year off the hopes and the prospects that this will be an emerging cobalt play in Europe, and it's a good location. Um, I was looking at a cobalt play in the Czech Republic, which was an old copper mine, but it's large in scale, and I think there's a lot of investors, from European investors, but just investors in general that want those type of plays, and if these ever materialize to anything substantial or significant where you know they could become mines in the future, we're probably talking multi-bagger potential here. It's just going to be on investors radar and focus. So um, it's just, unfortunately, it's just not that abundant. Like, for the most part, you kind of have to go to places like Congo to find kind of the projects that tick all the boxes, I guess, technically, geologically. But it's worth keeping an eye out on plays that, especially I think from Europe, if anything emerges out of Europe, because if you go to places like Australia, usually you're talking lower grade nickel laterite deposits that have substantial cobalt byproduct, but they don't really offer anything that can compete, I guess, geologically speaking, and compared to Congo, you're not going to get that type of cobalt. So Europe, I think, would be a good place to focus on, and just to see the activity that emerges from there.
I've got a contribution here. It's funny because I'm not specifically looking for cobalt, but I follow a lot of companies, and sometimes there's a company that might have been focused on gold or copper, and all of a sudden they have a cobalt project, and maybe something looks interesting. And I don't know if Jay caught this, but a couple days ago, this company Azure Minerals, which I've been following a while, they have they got a new cobalt potential project, and I look at the headline: spectacular 6.6% cobalt and 66 grams per ton gold drilled at Sarah Alicia. So this small new project, and to Fabi's point, and both Fabi and Jay's point, I think it's very interesting. Anything outside of the Congo, could be very interesting, but this is super early, and I believe this is very unusual as well, because I talked to my broker about it, and I don't think you usually see cobalt and gold together. So that it is hard to understand cobalt because it shows up in so many different ways, either the cobalt and the nickel laterite projects, or cobalt and copper, and now here's like cobalt and gold. But this is really high grade stuff, and this company is going through this. Azure is AZS on the ASX. I don't own shares. I do think it's kind of interesting. They have a mishmash of projects, and maybe they're using this one to hype themselves up. for other stuff that's kind of like their main projects. But who knows? This might become a main project of theirs. They're going through a share consolidation, so it's a little odd to buy right now. But that's worth looking into because yeah, anything that's this high grade, even if it's super early, that's outside of the Congo or outside of tough jurisdictions could be interesting. So this is in Mexico, which is also unusual for cobalt. Something to keep in mind. And I also just wanted to add, Jay and a few others have had awesome contributions in the MBG trends room at CEO.ca. So I think this is relevant to, all the listeners out there. I know that more people have been showing up lately, and I personally don't contribute as much. I've been lurking like a big professional lurker lately. I'm always around there, but I love the conversations because a lot of times it's stuff I don't even understand that well. But Cobalt has totally been something that's been trending, and I think a lot of the better conversations have been in that room because you get that mix of ASX plays and the mix of TSX. Like we've got some people, Aussies and Kiwis and North American people and Europeans, and a lot of stuff that Jay just described. He's been talking about it for months in there, and so you can kind of get an edge just hanging out there, whether you actually buy those plays or just reading to see what links people provide about Cobalt. So I mean, I've been really pleasantly surprised how great that's been. But I would highly recommend it if you like listening to this type of podcast. You'll get more of that same information, of course, at CEO.ca in general, but specific to this Cobalt conversation. It's actually been really good content in the MBG Trends room, which is my room by name, but it's people like Jay have been the best contributors recently.